Hi, it's me, Debbie Hilly, and I want to have a discussion about something that's a little hard to talk about, and that is pets that die in the grooming shop. It can happen to anybody. In light of the last few months with the expose on NewJersey.com talking about all the pets that have died nationwide at PetSmart and so forth, I feel like it's important to let people know that it happens everywhere. I'm one of those unlucky people that's had it happen multiple times. Only one of which was anybody's fault in my grooming shop. Not mine, but somebody who worked for me. We'll cover that one later. But I want to cover the ones that have happened to me. I was working at a vet clinic in Hawkinsville, Georgia, which is a rural farming community most people have never heard of. And they had a dog come in for grooming that had to be taken out of the back of the truck with a catch pole. He was that bad, and it was a schnauzer. The owners couldn't touch him. The only way they had gotten him into the truck was they put his food in a kennel. It took them 3 days to get him into the kennel. They didn't feed him outside the kennel for 3 days. He went into the kennel, somebody shut the door. It's the only way they caught him. They couldn't touch him. Got to the vet clinic, and the vet was like, "This is the meanest dog I've ever met. You're going to have a hell of a time with him, so I'm going to sedate him." Thank you. No problem. No argument from me, right? Knock that sucker out if he's that bad. Took him 5 minutes to get him out of the truck, and I'm sitting there watching going, "Doc, I don't know if this is going to work." He gave him an injection, and I'm not sure what it was. I couldn't tell you this many years later because that was 22 years ago, somewhere in there. And it didn't work. The dog was so hyped up, it didn't work. So I gave him another one. I got him done. Got bitten pretty doggone bad with a muzzle on him because he wasn't all the way out. I kept asking him, "Is there anything else you can do?" And he kept telling me he's had enough for a Rottweiler. Now remember, this is about a 25-pound Schnauzer. So couldn't give him any more. But he opted not to reverse the sedation because the dog was so bad. He wanted to be able to get him out of the cage and into the back of the truck when the owner got there. Well, that clinic shut down for lunch, and we all left for about an hour. I got back early. I had a key to the back door. I came in the back, and I started working. And in comes the vet tech named Chris. And Chris had this really bad habit of walking by every dog and sticking his fingers in the cage. And I've said, "Chris, there's a schnauzer in the back. Don't put your fingers in the cage. He'll take them off." And he looked at me like I had 10 heads. Walked into the back room, came out and went, "There's not a schnauzer in the back that isn't dead." What? What did you just say to me? I put my dog on my table up and I ran into the back. And sure enough, his tongue was purple. He was dead. Thank God the vet had to deal with the owners. I didn't have to deal with the owners. I actually had stitches from that dog. That's how bad he bit me. Doc stitched my hand up that day. I had about a 5 centimeter. It was huge, like a 2-inch gash. He stitched me up with 8 stitches. That's how bad that dog was, with sedation. The owners didn't seem to mind. They paid the vet bill. They paid the grooming bill. They told Doc, "Do whatever you want with the dog. I don't care." Got lucky on that one. But I never forgot that. At the same time I was working at that vet clinic, I was working at a grooming shop in another town here in the state of Georgia. I won't say the name of the town because then you might be able to find the person and that would be bad. So no, not doing it. They're still open. And there was this poodle, and I think his name was Dobby, but it's been, again, 22 years, so I don't know if I remember that correctly. And he and I had a rapport. He was a mean son of a gun. He would bite. And he bit hard. But he didn't bite me. I had a hard time with him, but he didn't bite me. And one day my boss decided that that dog should not be done by me again because I had done him the last time. And I begged her, "Please don't do this dog. Please put him on my schedule. He and I like each other. We have no problem. Please put him on my schedule." And she refused. I'm looking over, watching her groom him, and she's rough. And she was rough a lot. That's one reason I left. I could not work with her anymore. This dog dying was one of the reasons I left. And I'm watching her, and my dog is spazzing out. I'm fixing to cry. Oh. And I went over to take him away from her, and she pushed me away. She told me, no, get away from me. I got this. And I'm watching, and I'm not grooming a dog at the time. I'm just sitting on at my table watching her groom my dog. And it's getting worse and worse. And then I look at him and go, okay, he's having a seizure. I just said her name. Didn't mean to do that. Anyway, she said, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for X number of years. You're new. And I was a baby groomer, 1.5 years in. Maybe 2 years at the most. And she said, he's fine. He's just fighting me. I said, no, he's having a damn seizure. It's not the word I used, but you get the point. And she kept working on him, and she kept working on him. Well, I got out of my chair and went to the pet store next door to get Debbie, who worked there. And made her come in. I mean, I grabbed her by the arm and said, you have to come help me. And she walked in the door and said, he's having a seizure. By this time, it was a massive grand mal. I mean, he was flailing, and she still had him in the loop, and she was still working on him. And at that point, I had some backup. So I took him off her table, and I threw him at the bather, Josh, and said, get him to the vet. And he said, which vet? And I said, I don't care. Get him to a vet. When he got to the vet, he was dead. And I blamed myself for that this entire time, because I feel like if he'd been on my table, it wouldn't have happened. Private shop, small town. So it happens everywhere. It doesn't happen just in corporate, it happens everywhere. That really upset me to talk about that. Anyway, then we move on, and I left there. My boyfriend at the time helped me move my stuff out over the weekend because I had a key. And I moved all my stuff out, and I left. And I went to a vet clinic that I was working at 1 day a week. At that time, I was working at 3 different clinics. I was working in Eastman, Hawkinsville, and Albany, Georgia. And I went to the Albany, Georgia clinic from there. Added a day, and even did kennel work. I was hungry. I needed the money. I had 3 kids to support, and I did what I had to do. I cleaned kennels for a while while we built up that grooming business at that clinic, and I added a day in another one of the clinics. So I made it. I would have left there a lot earlier had I known that I could have done it. But when you're young, and I was only in my early 30s, and you have kids to support, you do what you got to do. And looking back now, I wish I had left like the first week I was in that clinic, that shop. But I learned a lot of what not to do. I learned an awful lot about this business from her. But I have a really horrible couple of experiences there that I lived. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, didn't realize this was going to be that hard to do. I opened my own shop about 8 months later. My dad took out a business loan for $7,000, and we opened up a shop. Bare minimum equipment, but we opened up a shop, excuse me. First year was easy. I didn't make a lot of money. I kept my vet clinics. In fact, I added another vet clinic. But I had staff at the shop, and it worked. Now, looking back now, it wasn't working. I should have left the vet clinics. I should have put all my time into my shop, but I didn't. It was just extra money, and it was a way for me to eventually get to where I could leave the vet clinics. At that point, I had left Hawkinsville, but I was still working in Eastman 1 day a week, and I was working in Albany at 2 shops each 1 day, or 2 clinics each 1 day a week. I was working at my own shop 3 days a week, and in the afternoons after the clinics. It's a lot of driving, it's a lot of work, but I did it. I had been in my location for about 1 year and 2 months when I told the landlord I was moving. I had no heat, I had no air, he wasn't fixing anything, we had signed a very short 3-month lease after the end of my first lease because he needed me to do stuff that I knew I couldn't afford to do, like put up a lighted sign, which wasn't in the original agreement, and put in my own air conditioner, which I didn't have the money to replace a $3,000 air conditioner. So I moved. And at the location I moved to, I had room for boarding, which I had not had at the other location. And probably 6 months into my business in that location, I had a little Yorkie named Annie. Now, Annie came in with a poodle, whose name I can't remember. Isn't that awful? Can't remember the poodle's name. Again, we're talking 20 years ago. Remember Annie, though? I groomed her. She was tiny. She might have weighed 4 pounds. She was tiny. And she had a parrot mouth. And for those of you who don't know what that is, the upper jaw extends way out from the lower jaw. I could literally put my thumb sideways and not touch teeth. It was that bad. She had a very tiny mandible. She wasn't acting quite right. Now, she'd never been away from home, so I kind of chalked it up to that. She was with her buddy. She was not eating, which again, with tiny Yorkies is not abnormal. So I gave her some NutriCal. At her vet's insistence, I gave her NutriCal. We spoon-fed her a little bit of wet food, and she ate that. She perked up a little bit, but she still wasn't acting quite right. But again, I just chalked it up to her not being at home. Well, I had an apartment upstairs from the clinic, or the shop. I keep saying clinic, from the shop, and I stayed there that night. I did that sometimes if I worked really late and wasn't going to be able to get home until after 8 o'clock. I'd just stay at the grooming shop in the apartment. My kids were with my parents, so they were taken care of, and I would just let them know I'm staying here tonight. I'll see y'all tomorrow. They understood. They went to school in that county, and I lived an hour away. So if I was going to be really late getting home because I worked late, I just stayed at the shop. About 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up out of a dead sleep. I mean, I was sleeping. I woke up. Voice going, you should go check on Annie. You should go check on Annie. I didn't go check on Annie. I convinced myself that I didn't need to go check on her, that she was fine, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, go back to sleep. So I did. I should have gone and checked on Annie. I don't think there's anything I could have done. When I woke up the next morning, she was dead. In her bed, curled up asleep. Like nothing was wrong, but she was dead. And I flipped stupid. Literally flipped stupid. Called my boyfriend. He came up. He's now my husband. He calmed me down. We called their vet. I closed that day. I called everybody on my books and said, I'm sorry, I've had an emergency I have to deal with. I can't do your dogs. We moved into another day. Everybody was understanding. Everybody took it well. Except me. I've blamed myself for that dog dying since she died. And I know I didn't do it. The vet said she had a liver shunt, which the parents were aware of. And he chalked it up to that, to her liver enzymes being off. But 3 days later, in the bottom of her kennel, where she had been sleeping, I found a squeaky toy squeaker. Now, 20 years ago, for those of you who don't know, some of the squeakers were this long and they were metal. She didn't have any toys at my shop. She had toys at home with squeakers. What we think happened is she ingested that squeaker, and in the process of vomiting it up, after it had already caused her to get so weak and dehydrated and everything else, because it was either in her esophagus or in her stomach blocking stuff. In the process of her vomiting it up, she aspirated. We never told the owners that. We let the owners think it was a liver shunt. It wasn't my fault, but I still blame myself. If I had been there when she aspirated, could I have stopped it? Maybe, maybe not. We'll never know. The owners were incredibly kind. I actually called their daughter, because they were out of town, and let her know what had happened. And when her mom and dad got back, she told them. I didn't have to. Mom was a basket case when, in fact, Dad came to pick up the dogs, or the dog, and they picked up Annie from the vet. They had her cremated and picked her up there. That one was rough. I did their dogs until their poodle died. So they knew it wasn't my fault. This is hard. Then we have Brutus, whom I still groom for his mother too. I groomed her dogs about 3 weeks ago, and in fact, she was at my stepson's wedding. That's how funny this small town is. She was at my stepson's wedding. I didn't even know she knew them, but she does. Anyhow, Brutus was a peekapoo, and I started grooming him at one of the vet clinics here in town, and he had always been sedated to be groomed. And the first time I did him, I didn't know he'd been sedated because their records were really shitty. And I just groomed him, and I had no problems. So we weaned him up. I mean, he just got taken off sedation, not even weaned off, just done with sedation, and I groomed him for several years. When I left the vet clinic, she followed me to my shop because she knew I could groom her dog. Well, Brutus also had horrible skin. Looking back, what I know now, he probably had mange. He probably had Demodex. We didn't know that at the time, and the vet gave him a steroid injection every 2 to 3 weeks for 7 years. See this face? I didn't know then what I know now, but I know that that's bad for them. I know that that can kill them, and it did. It killed him. I had him on my table. He had been bathed. He had been dried. He was standing on my table, and everything was fine. Loop is loose because he didn't like a tight loop. Loose loop. Loose loop. In fact, it was under his armpit because he really had always hated one on his neck. I think that's probably why he got sedated in the first place, but I had run it under his armpit and one under his belly. And I picked up his front feet to do his pads because that's my routine. Pads, belly, butt, eyes, ears, body, head. That's my routine on a peekapoo. It always has been. It probably always will be. Picked up his front feet to do his pads. He didn't act quite right. I looked at him, went, "You okay?" And he looked up at me and didn't answer, but didn't expect one. Went to do his back feet and realized he had sort of fallen down. He was not standing anymore. He was literally hanging in the loop that was under his armpit and under his belly. And it scared me badly. And I picked him up like this and looked at his face, and he was turning purple. He wasn't breathing. I grabbed him up. I had my husband and my son working on my front door at the time, and I'm like, "Get out of my way." Get out of my way. And on my way out the door, I screamed back at my son, "Call Dockery, Williams, Odom, and Daraso, the vet. Tell them I'm on my way." And my son had no idea what was going on because I just grabbed the dog and ran. He died at the vet clinic. The vet was not his vet. His vet was on the other side of town. It would have taken me 15 minutes to get to it. So I went to the vet that's 3 minutes away, maybe 5. But anyway, much closer. And the way I got there, it might have taken me 2.5. I flew. I'm surprised I didn't get stopped by the cops, but I wasn't slowing down. I think I ran a red light getting there. They took him straight back. I mean, they met me at the door. They took him in the back. They did epinephrine into the heart. They did adrenaline. They did everything they could do, and he still died. The vet there told the owner that the steroids are what killed her dog. In fact, he notified, I called Kathy, and I said, "Kathy, I need you to meet me at Dockery, Williams, Odom, and Daraso." And she said, "Why? Is Brutus okay?" And I said, "No, he's not." That's all I could say. I said, "But I want you to meet with the vet over there that treated him for me." And she met me there in like 10 minutes. She lives on the other side of town, so it took her a while, but she got there, and the vet and I sat down with her, and he said, "What your vet's been doing killed your dog." He had a massive heart. His heart was super enlarged. He was not on any heart medication. He had probably had a heart attack on my table. Steroid use will do that to you. Like I said, she hugged my neck. It was her birthday. Of all days, it was her birthday. Here we go again. She also had the Marine Corps ball. It was the Marine Corps ball day. 2 years later, she got a little Jack Russell. And she called me and asked me, would I be willing to groom it? Of course I will. We still do. She's a neat lady. I love her to pieces. That happened. And then we have the one that is my fault. This one's really hard to talk about. So if I break down, just forgive me. My husband and I, let me back up. The back room of my grooming shop at the time had been in a garage, so it had asphalt floors. Couldn't clean them. They were awful. I hated that back room. And we had painted it with epoxy, so it was easier to clean. But we had the foam puzzle piece mats down and some stall mats down, and we had to get them clean. So we had them out back, pressure washing them. And one of the girls who worked for me at the time was walking the 2 boarding dogs we had, which were 2 little Yorkies. They were brothers, little Raids. And we had an X-pen out in the front yard with a top on it, fully fenced in. You could put the dogs out in. It was staked to the ground, had a door on it. Open the door, put the dogs in, let them potty, open the door, get the dogs out, bring them back in. I thought about saying, make sure that the door is closed. But the girl was one of those that if I had said that, she'd have hit the ceiling and said, I'm not that stupid. So I didn't say anything. I wish I had. She put both dogs in, didn't shut the door, didn't realize it was open. A client had had it open. There are 2 doors on it. I guess I should have said that. There were 2 doors. And one of the clients had opened one of the doors that we never went in and left it open. Well, she took the time to take her shoes off before she started chasing the dogs and throw them in the shop, but she never screamed for help. I came out front wondering what was taking her so long, and my son came with me. He saw her shoes, he went running. I went running. We didn't know which way we were going, but we went running. He went one way, I went the other. We're on a busy road. He caught one of the dogs at a gas station just a block down the road. 1 block down the road. The other dog had kept running and got hit at the next intersection and killed. Yeah, that happened. I wasn't in charge of the dog, but it happened. It happened in my shop. Makes it my responsibility, right? Absolutely. When she came back, she literally carried the dog that had just been hit by the car and was dead, limp in her arms down the main drag in town. That happened. I fired her on the spot. When I asked her why she hadn't shut the other door, she said, when did you put a door on it? She'd worked for me for a year. That pen had been in the yard for a year. I accept responsibility for that. It was hard, but I accepted responsibility for that. We replaced the puppy. She got fired. But if I had just opened my mouth and said, make sure both doors are shut, or make sure you shut the door on the X-pen, it wouldn't have happened. So now in here, my staff pays the price for that. If something pops into my head, even if it's something that they're going to think is stupid, I say it. Like, don't forget to close the door. Don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do that. Did you do this? It comes out my mouth because of that incident. So I learned a lot. And again, I wasn't in charge of the dog, but it was my shop and it was my responsibility. So we take it, we own it. My point with this is that it can happen anywhere. Oh, and then there was Stevie. Stevie died in the tub. CPR brought her back. She had what the vet thought was probably respiratory failure. She literally died. There was no pulse, there was no respiration. She was purple. I started doing CPR. I did 2 breaths of mouth to mouth and she popped up like nothing was wrong. The vet thinks her respiratory system shut down. Her dad wanted me to groom her after that. I was like, no, come get your dog. We actually never bathed her again. We let him bathe her. It was easier that way. He bathed her, brought her in wet. We went from there. So knowing CPR can save a dog's life. I've saved 3 with it. knowing the technique of putting your fingers in a throat, side, up, and down can save a life. I've done a blog on that too. Look for it. But my point here is it can happen in a small shop. It can happen in a one-person shop. It can happen in a 5-person shop. It can happen in a corporate setting. It can happen anywhere. If the dog comes in sick, if the dog comes in with a pre-existing condition like a squeaker stuck in her stomach that you don't know is there, that dog can die on you. How you handle it, however, that's what keeps you off the front page of Facebook. Be honest with the people. Be compassionate. Accept responsibility. Do what you have to do to make them feel like you understand their pain. I haven't ever lost a client in my shop. The 3 that died, I didn't lose. Even the Yorkie that got hit, I didn't lose them as a client. They came in with the dog afterwards, the new puppy, because we handled it properly. We took the proper precautions and we made sure it would never happen again. Treated them with empathy, owned it, accepted responsibility, and made it right as best we could. I didn't ask them to sign a non-disclosure. I didn't give anybody a hard time. And maybe, just maybe, one of the reasons why you only hear about it in the grooming salons at the corporates so much are because it's easier to sue the person sitting behind the desk 3,000 miles away than it is to sue the face that you've seen every month for 5 years or longer. Does that make sense? It's a whole lot harder to sue Sue or Debbie or Linda or whomever, Billy, that you've known forever and you know didn't do anything, than it is to say, well, I understand that Sally groomed my dog at PetSmart and has for several years, but she's not the owner. I'm going to sue the owner. They don't realize what that does to everybody. They don't realize what that does to the groomer that did the dog. They have no idea how much damage they're doing. And I think a lot of times it's done out of blind grief. They're lashing out. They've got to blame somebody because it couldn't be anything they did. It couldn't just be that it's the dog's time to go. It couldn't be because their dog is 20 pounds overweight or it's had steroid injections for all of its life or that it has a heart problem that they are not treating. Couldn't be any of that now, could it? They are lashing out and they are taking it out on whomever they can. And when you have an anonymous person, several thousand miles away, sitting at a desk that you're suing, it's a lot easier than suing the person you've been dealing with day in and day out. Because they're not suing the dog groomers at PetSmart, they're suing the corporations. Does that make sense? I think that's one reason why you don't hear about the mom and pop salons so much, but it happens to us too. I've had more than my fair share. 2 in my own shop, 2 elsewhere. Yeah. It's awful. I hope you never have to go through it. But if you do, be honest, be compassionate, take care of any bills that are outstanding, and keep calm. You'll get through it. It's not going to ruin you as long as you do the right things. Pay any vet bills, pay any cremation that they want. Take care of whatever caused it to happen in the first place and make sure it never happens again. For example, with the Yorkie, we got rid of the X-Men. Boom, gone. Got rid of the girl that was so stupid she didn't close the door. Boom, gone. Solved that problem. It's made me a better, smarter, safer groomer. And hopefully I just made you one. Have a great Sunday, everybody. I'm out of here. I'm going home. I can't reach that from here.